Welcome to Journey Now, a podcast about following Jesus that takes on serious issues without ever taking itself too seriously. Each week, the pastors, staff, and friends of Journey Church in Brentwood, Tennessee, gather to catch up, share life together, and laugh a little. Okay, a lot. Maybe too much. But along the way, they also explore what it really means to bring heaven to earth, share Jesus' hospitality, and live cross-shaped lives. Part babble, part Bible, and occasionally even thoughtful and entertaining, this is Journey Now.
Hello, everyone. My name is Edwin, and I'm the guy who sits behind the chair that I'm pointing to that you can't see right over there. I just want to let you know, I want to apologize to Team Banter for not recording your favorite portion of the pod today. I either A, hit the button to record video and it did not register, or I didn't hit the record button for video. I want to say I hit it and it didn't register. Anyways, just want to let you know I'm sorry that I did not capture your favorite portion, but it is on podcast. So wherever you get your podcast, you can listen to the banter there. Team Bible, you're welcome.
Says, hey, as an act of love, we need to tell people that they're in sin or that they're going to hell or whatever.
Right. This caused some problems.
And it's so ingrained in us to approach it this way.
Yeah.
And the verse that is often used is from Ephesians, and it's when Paul's talking about being blown left and right by false teaching, and he talks about speaking the truth in love. And so we put up and this was, we did not do a good thorough treatment of this.
We didn't do a chart.
We needed a chart.
We needed a chart.
We put some Greek words, though, up on the screen.
But there was no chart.
That there was no chart. And you're right.
You've mentioned that a few times.
I know.
Kevin,
so
let me just tell you.
For Kevin to want the chart.
I know. I know.
I was
well, Kevin.
Where's the chart?
If you mapped Kevin's brain, it would be a spreadsheet. Yeah.
It is.
It would that's how his brain works.
Oh, wait, wrong category.
It is a Kevin thing. Exactly. Our other Kevin is exactly that way as well. Oh. But the interesting thing is that there is a noun that is the word for truth. There is a verb that is to truth. Mm-hmm. And then what Paul does with the verb is he makes it a participle, which means the equivalent of adding in English an ing. So the one word that we translate speaking the truth is actually just more literally translated truthing, of which speaking is a part. But when you look at the rest of the context of what it looks like to speak truth in love, it's everything to do with not living as the Gentiles do, but living as the redeemed community. So the better way to understand that is truthing in love, or truthing out of love, or truthing in order to love, or truthing by love. The truth is that the resurrection of Jesus is put on display by a community of love. Mm-hmm. Now that doesn't mean, of course, that there aren't times to talk. Absolutely. But the predominant emphasis in the New Testament isn't, hey, I want you to really nail the gospel presentation and have answers to every potential objection
and point out everybody's sin.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But rather, the emphasis of the New Testament is for the church to look more and more like Christ. What? Now I know, shocking.
Who would have thought?
Shocking. But this, for those of us raised in traditionally evangelical backgrounds, this is a big deal, because part of evangelical is evangelism.
Yeah.
And evangelism is that's what we're supposed to do, right? We're to fulfill the Great Commission in this generation. And we can excuse a whole heck of a lot of pastoral malfeasance if people are coming to Jesus.
Wow, that's a big word.
Pastoral malfeasance.
Yes.
Dude.
Wow.
The only reason I know that word is because I've done that.
I thought it was because you watched the movie Maleficence, or is that what it's called? The Angelina Jolie movie?
Well,
you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. It's one of those words that's weird to say out loud, like Hermione.
But it's fine.
Is that a word?
Yes.
Yeah.
Clearly, you're not a Harry Potter fan.
My vocabulary just shrunk.
Yeah.
Or grew.
Oh, grew. Yeah, could have grew.
So you were saying that you have committed
Well,
malfeasance?
I think Maleficence. That's the word. That's what I've committed is maleficence.
Maleficence.
No, I think that as much as I want to talk about other people and we want to talk about other
Yes.
people doing bad religion, I've got to, per Jesus, like the speck
Yeah.
in everyone else's eye is small compared to the log in my own.
Do you, per se, believe that maybe over the years we've used this phrase to say things that probably we shouldn't have?
I per se,
No.
yes, absolutely.
It's like the big excuse verse.
It really is.
I was just trying to speak the truth
Yeah.
in love.
Exactly.
Apparently,
I didn't feel loved.
Right. And this was a big deal in your class.
It
right?
turned out to be. Yeah,
Right.
I was like, wow, we're gonna hijack the whole thing.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Kevin does a discussion class during the second service,
Right.
where people from the first service sort of wrestle through some of the implications
Yes.
of this, and,
yeah.
and it's such a cool because you don't do most of the talking. I mean, that's
No, in fact,
them.
you got yelled at this
Oh,
week.
like what? Yeah, come on. What? Yeah, I was invited in very loudly. They were speaking the truth in love to me.
Yeah.
Come on, lazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Oh no, I was entertained. I was entertained. It was.
well, you just see
fantastic.
how ingrained this is in all of us.
So
It is.
I have a question. When
Yeah. Yeah.
when we talk
Suzie has a question.
when
Fearless
we
Suzie.
talk about speaking the truth in love, and I think to like what was ingrained in me, it feels very individualistic. Like I have a personal responsibility to speak the truth in love to all the people around me who are not doing the right thing.
Right.
But we kind of already have,
All the
at least
people.
our community has established that it's not just like I don't bear the weight of that myself.
Yeah.
But when you talk about looking at the speck in our own eyes, that also feels a little bit like I have no place to say anything because
Right.
you know, so where's the balance, I guess, between
good.
personal responsibility and
Yeah.
the responsibility of a community as a collective
Yeah.
of people?
That was the conversation. That was a lot of the conversation.
Well, then why don't you tell us?
Oh,
Yeah. Kevin.
no, I want to hear Tim's ideas because he's new to the table here, and he's over there going.
He's
You
an
guys
honored
just
guest.
Go ahead and
He's an
talk."
honored
I'm just-
guest.
Yeah,
Learning.
I just feel like we've ignored him completely.
So the personal responsibility versus communal responsibility of evangelism or of truthing.
Can I, before we go down that
Yeah,
path,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I've got a question from the text line that'll help focus this a little more, but
What you're saying we're not focused?
not at all. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. I'm saying
Say what
is
you're.
is speaking actually in the Greek there?
No.
I didn't think so. So if we pull that word out,
Yeah.
how does it? That's where I tried to take the class.
Yeah.
I didn't succeed. But if you pull that word out, it moves us away from the idea that I have to say something, but I have to embody something.
Right.
Which is like the struggle for a lot of us.
We'd rather say
in
something.
Western
Absolutely.
American
Yeah.
Christian
World.
is like we're really good at talking something up,
Yeah.
but not very good at
Yeah.
embodying it.
We have a friend named Tim Gombas, another Tim, who is
You
the
do have a
holy-
lot of Tims
We have
in
a
your
lot of
life.
Tims.
It's a holy name.
Seth will literally just list
right.
off all the Tims that we have in our life. It's just the greatest thing. He's like, he just notices there's a lot of Tims and Kevin.
Yeah.
One Suzie though, Suzie
One.
P. Lind. Only one, all the full name every time.
Yeah. There it is. You're special. The rest
But one
of
of
us
the
are
things,
just one of many.
so our friend Tim is a Pauline scholar, got his doctorate in Ephesians, and he translates speaking the truth in love, performing the truth. And that's actually a great translation.
That's robust.
because when you take, so the noun is truth, the verb is to truth, and there are other times that's translated to speak truth. But here, when Paul turns it into a participle, that's the thing where we've settled on an idea that truth and love are things to be balanced, rather than truth and love are two sides of the kingdom. So when I'm
Same
truthing,
coin.
I'm
Same
loving,
coin.
and when I'm loving, I'm truthing.
Yeah.
And you can't do one without the other. So that's the big point: is if it's not experienced as love, then it's not truthing. Now the question is, and this Scott McKnight, and we talked about this in the John 3:16 series.
Yeah.
What does it mean to love, and when do you exhort people, because obviously there's a time for that.
Yeah.
And
We spur one another on.
yeah, all the one another's.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I've had people intervene in my life with a very strong truth statements about how they're experiencing me or something I'm doing that I'm blind to. So this is absolutely critical to the health of the community. But first of all, it's about the community, not about people outside the community. Paul even says, who am I to judge those outside the church? I judge those inside. But inside the church, we're to practice covenant love with each other. And covenant love, Scott McKnight in his book, Fellowship of Difference, defines covenant love as God's rugged commitment to be committed to us, God's rugged commitment to be with us, God's rugged commitment to be for us, and then God's rugged commitment to love us toward our future, our destiny, the Christ-likeness and image bearing that we were made for.
Right.
So
Despite our
exactly.
yes,
And because of
Such a
that,
good word.
because of such,
yes,
the order of those is really important.
yes, it is.
That how God redeems Israel, how Jesus dealt with people, the commitment to them, to be with them, and to be for them, with the exception of the religious leaders, always came before the torting. So, and we looked at John 8, right, where Jesus encounters the woman caught in adultery, and just the hypocrisy of that whole setup. And so, of course, Jesus says, leave your life of sin. It is sin.
Yeah.
But that's only after he has diffused the shame bombing and joined her in the public humiliation that the crowd was attempting to foist upon her. And so there's this beautiful picture of the covenant love of God, even with Israel, that manifests itself in covenant belonging before the torting ever begins. Now, McKnight's point is that that's how we're to love each other. That when somebody feels that I'm committed to them, I'm committed to be with them, and they know that I am for them, then torting actually feels like love. If you take those other three words out and there's no context, it's never going to feel like love. It's going to feel like control or manipulation. And this is obviously, this is how we work out in marriages and in churches and in families. The ones that do this well absolutely exhort each other, but they do it in the context of we are faithfully committed to one another no matter what.
Yeah.
The best families, absolutely, we're exhorting our kids and torting our kids, but even if they make choices that aren't aligned with our torting, they know we're still committed to them, to be with them, and to be for them. So that's for me, that's the line. There are times, and Paul obviously took someone who was egregiously sinning in the community and said, okay, community, we can't celebrate this anymore. This is now infecting the whole thing. And so there are times perhaps
and
that
that's
happens.
the key, where it's infecting the whole thing.
Right. Yep.
The whole community.
Because we all, that's where we all have stuff in our lives that needs addressing and needs refining and needs repentance. But when it's affecting the whole community is what he's talking about.
But it's always redemptive. It moves.
It's not disciplinary.
It's not. It is. That's the misnomer behind church discipline. I got a question on text line about that.
Everyone wants to know what we're going to do about that.
Yeah, but there's, and I think this is where the Center Set book is spot on.
Yeah,
it's reorienting. It's moving people back in the direction of following Jesus, even no matter where they are in that. In the distance from the center.
That's right. That's right.
There's a callback, and oftentimes we just want to separate. We want to create a bounded. Environment where we say, or we want to go, well, I don't see it, so we become fuzzy. But mostly we want to ostracize.
Exactly. So
Maleficent.
So one of the very big implications, Kevin, that you were exploring is what the world is looking for isn't more truth tellers that are just verbal,
right?
But people who for whom Jesus actually makes a real difference as embodied in a community, and that's
more of like a prophetic response.
Right? Exactly.
Prophetic?
Prophetic.
Oh, prophetic.
Prophetic.
Okay, just clarifying that.
As opposed to amateurphetic, but yes.
Yes.
So So
There's that.
really, and we wrestle with this a lot in our community. We have loads. That has been a consistent theme of questions for the last 2.5 years is what about evangelism?
Right.
What about evangelism?
Right.
And I'm all for it. I am all for more and more people experiencing Jesus.
For sure.
But when we're truthing in love, there isn't a black and white, like, come forward and raise your hands. We have people in our community who've come antagonistically, or only for the sake of other relationship, but as they're brought into the orbit of word and scripture and community, their heart softens. But the worst thing you could have done at that point is to say, listen, which of the 10 commandments have you broken? Answer all of them. And you need a savior.
All of them?
Well,
But also,
I feel bad now.
I think the way that the thing that comes to
I
mind
got
for
a
me
lot of
in
work
terms
to
of
do.
the way that we were formed with evangelism is the concept of leading someone to Christ. Like, it's our
that's
responsibility
great,
to lead people to the Lord.
yeah.
And it's not that. It's, I mean,
I love
evangelism is just the proclamation of the good news of Jesus. It's how it's communicating. That's what evangelism is. It's not one particular way of saying it or doing it,
Right.
or any particular outcome.
Right.
It's our responsibility as the community of faith to just communicate the good news of Jesus, and whether that's through testimony or serving people or preaching or whatever. But the outcome is not ours. And that, I think, is what a lot of us had a responsibility put on us with the outcome. The other thing about that you have to look at is the context, because how somebody evangelizes in Africa, I mean, this is easy. We all can understand this. How somebody evangelizes in Africa or in South America is going to be different than how somebody does on Skid Row in LA or New York City or something like that. So you have to look at context, which is time and place. And so we right now are in a very different context than the one that we were all raised in.
Yeah.
Like people group, time, place, culture, all of it.
Yeah.
And so we're just trying to figure out how do you communicate the good news in this current context, i.e. cultural moment, like whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah.
And that's where people, I think, get hung up because we don't know how to do it a different way yet.
Right. There's an awareness of your situation, of your culture, where you, that I think also,
Say it.
we've also stumbled, not we, the church primarily presented the gospel as a transaction. And in that transaction, you get something if you do this, and God does something if you do this, and
Pray with people to receive Christ.
yeah, but and so when you distill a relationship with God down to a transaction, it destroys, I think, the essence of the gospel, and that is part of the struggle with trying to help people deconstruct how many people have come to Jesus in that transactional way, that have found him and then had to rework the whole thing around the idea that, oh, this isn't a Jesus that I just get to engage with when I feel like it, or I get to live any way I want, or I get to, it fascinates me. I mean, it really does. It fascinates me how you come to Jesus often affects.
The Jesus you come to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's so good.
Well, and I also think the dynamics of, and I know Tim was massively involved in a parachurch ministry that would try to put on display covenant love prior to people accepting Jesus or whatever.
Okay.
But one of the things that I think we would both say, looking back on that, and please comment to this, is I would always enter into a situation not as a reciprocal learner. I was entering into a situation as, well, I've got something to give and you need what I've got.
Right.
So there was almost this posture over people.
Absolutely.
It's
like I always talked about having a Messiah complex and feeling, because I was raised in that idea that I have the secret
Right.
And I can give it to you, but you've got to participate in whatever version of that I'm going to give it to you.
I've got the cure for cancer.
Yep.
Why wouldn't I?
And I will give it to you
Right.
if you answer these questions correctly. If not,
So when did that start changing for you?
oh, that's so funny. I was thinking about all that today with trauma eggs.
Yeah, which is something we're doing part of this conference.
Because I was thinking while you guys were talking, like I'm not a part of a church right now. Haven't been for years, and I grieve that to a certain extent. And I don't know why I grieve it though. That's what I'm wrestling with. Is I grieve. I don't know if I grieve the memory of what being a part of a church was, or what exactly that it is. But what I've found is that with the community of people that I'm a part of, and there's a large group of us that are all kind of misplaced at the moment. That, and I tell Mike this all the time. It's like there's a Bruce Springsteen song that talks about if I should fall behind, wait for me, and if you fall behind, I'll wait for you. That's how I feel we operate.
Oh.
It's active, it's moving. It's not a sedentary, like we're not sitting in one place. We're always kind of moving.
I think that was
and if
directed
one
at
person
us.
falls behind, we'll all stop, help that person up. If I fall behind, I know they will all stop and pick me up.
That's cool.
While we're moving towards the center. I like the product placement, by the way. It's
Yeah,
So
Kevin does that.
When you
Anyway.
say that you're not part of a church, though, how is that different?
It's not. We're not part of a brick and mortar.
Okay.
That's the thing that we wrestle with. Is the church, is it necessary to exist the way you and I were talking about the other night? It's like, is this model, is this the necessary vehicle for it? Or is it the vehicle that we all know the best? And so that's why we will use this. And I think you guys do a wonderful job of that, of using a vehicle that's very comfortable while challenging some of the norms and challenging the conversation, which I think is beautiful. A lot of churches they want to, and that's my experience in my hometown, is a lot of the churches, they find that model and they find the people that can fit into those puzzle pieces and deliver the message the same way it's been delivered for 60 years and just toe that line, continue it forward. There's no blood in it. There's no real life in it. It's just like we all play this part. So that's why that's what I feel is active about what I'm not a part of, is that it's not just Sunday, because we all are living Sunday through Sunday together.
Yeah.
So however that translates into a building would be fascinating to me.
Yeah, exactly right. And that's part of the big question. So how big does the community have to be in order to truth?
2 or more.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Oh.
Yeah. So anyway, we had a clarifying question. Do you want to go to that?
Oh, sure.
This is on that same path.
Would have loved to hear more elaboration on truthing in love.
I mean, here it is.
Yeah. Does it essentially boil down to attitude, approach, aka emphasis on the in love versus tough love, as in how Jesus approached the woman about to be stoned? Meaning, rocks thrown at her.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you. Yep.
Important clarification.
Well done.
Do you have an amplified Bible in your hands?
Yeah. It's so funny. All of Kevin's favorite verses are 4:20. Matthew 4:20, Mark 4:20.
5 has gone to 7.
Yeah, it's true.
As in how Jesus approached it.
Yeah.
How do we, as a church, approach issues of conviction like that?
Yeah.
On an individual or community level with love, without being dismissive of something that may be sinful or is sinful.
Sure.
Like getting stoned.
Yeah. Well said.
I couldn't resist that.
Well said. Yeah.
Grant,
I love that.
Being stoned, Grant, right there.
Yeah. I asked, so Kevin and I played pickleball this morning, and I had a very poor transition where I said, "Hey, Kevin, can I change in your office?" And he said yes. And then I shifted topics in my head, but I said, "Hey, I have something to show you." That was my next line. And I meant to show him something on my computer for an all church table that we have on Sunday night, but it just came out. There was no verbal acknowledgement. I turned a corner. So it came out as, "Hey, can I change in your office? I have something to show you." So I don't know. I
laughed, by the way. I thought that was pretty funny.
So anyway, hence the apology at the end of the podcast. But one of the things that I think we really misunderstand is what love turns out to be. And you guys all know this, right? Love for us means affection. It's an inner disposition towards somebody that is welcoming, receiving, delighting in. In the Bible, of course, it's the word is a lot like faith. It's an action word. It's a verbal. It's like a verb.
It's demonstrated.
Yeah, it's demonstrated. It's embodied. It's performed.
Yep.
So to speak truth in love isn't truthing or doing justice to truth or love. Because love is never something. Now, obviously, verbal expressions can be expressions of love, but love manifests itself primarily in how you act. And so when we talk about harsh truth, Jesus obviously spoke very harsh truth in the vein of the Old Testament prophets against some of the religious leaders of Israel, just like his dad did, in the Old Testament. Great. But the sense that I can be trusted to be the bearer of harsh truth to people, I just think there's a lot of really nasty interpersonal dynamics at play there. That when Paul talks about if someone is caught in sin, restore them gently. Right? So this idea that there has to be harsh truth here, I just don't know that I buy it. Like Paul does write strongly against false teachers. Yes. Absolutely. And I think we
rightfully
should.
so.
And rightfully so.
Yeah.
But to the dumbassery that was present in all of his churches.
Yes.
That wasn't false teaching.
So,
but he's calling them saints.
Yeah.
He's like, the harshest thing he'll say is something like, how can I call you godly? When you're like, you're just worldly, you're just like infants.
Yeah.
Like that's the harshest thing he'll say, but then he'll follow up with all this woo. I mean, so I just don't know that I buy like that the church voice has to be this harsh voice. I just don't. If the harsh voice is going to be put on display, then it's got to be toward religious leaders or false teachers. But even then, I don't think we're trustworthy with the harsh voice. I think that the gentle, sustained, covenant love approach is the best way to handle those things, regardless of whether or not the person responds. There may come a time when action has to be taken, but love doesn't mean I have affection. Love means that I'm not just verbally saying something, but love is if I have the opportunity to harm, I do not. And if I have the opportunity to bless, I do. Yeah. That's what love is. Yeah. So love your neighbor, love your enemy.
That's the motivational piece of this.
Right.
It's what am I towarding them? Am I moving toward them in such a way that they trust this? Am I in like, if I'm going to speak truth to somebody, speak it. I need a receptive audience that trusts me.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
it doesn't feel.
It not only doesn't feel good, it doesn't work,
and it hurts you.
Right.
I mean that sense of superiority that says I can bypass all other reciprocal relationship and just go straight to here's what's wrong with you.
Yeah. Right. If I know that God loves me and that He's for me and He moves toward me and He says, you know what, you should repent. I go, yeah, I should, because you're for me and you're trying to align me.
Exactly.
And you're moving toward me. You're not moving away from me.
Right.
There's something about that is totally different than standing up in front of a group of people, calling them out as sinners and saying you need to repent.
But let's talk about hell then. Because the big
I knew that was the transition coming right there.
The big argument against
Why are you pointing at me?
all this.
I'm good at bringing hell. She's not as good at it as
Heaven and Kevin.
Yeah, baby.
Heaven and Kevin, those are the choices.
Come on.
The big counter to this is, hey, people's eternal salvation is at stake.
Yes.
So how in the world, and they'll quote Penn from Penn and Teller years ago that said, hey, why wouldn't you share your faith with me? If you really believe that I'm going to go to hell, then you ought to be telling me.
Yeah.
So that's one very legit counter is to like, guys, people's lives are in danger.
Their eternity is
also
at
that
stake.
skit that all of us saw in youth group about the people going in two different directions.
Oh,
and,
I didn't see that.
Edwin's over there nodding.
I didn't see that skit.
I
saw. We would sing a song that it pictured people who would greet you saying thank you.
Yeah.
For bringing me to the Lord. I'm a life that was changed. And then there were other people that were like, hey, you didn't say anything, and here I am frying.
Let's talk about trauma.
Great job.
Yeah,
exactly. Exactly.
Oof.
So one of the interesting things when
we have that much power.
Yes.
According to some,
Lord have mercy, if that God gave me that much power,
right?
What was he thinking?
That's the Messiah complex.
Huh? There it is, right there.
But it's interesting. The early church's gospeling was not ever focused on hell.
No.
Or I mean, read the speeches in the book of Acts. Read Paul's preaching.
Yeah.
Like when they were gospeling, both in word and in deed, hell was not the center of the conversation.
Because the Hebrew Bible had
Nothing
nothing to say about it.
No, and so Jesus brings up Gehenna, which is the valley of Ben Hinnom, which is a reference to Old Testament immorality, and we translate that as hell. Well,
Which it is.
it is.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But it's not a place of eternal torture for people sometimes. And we can get into that whole
Some other
conversation
time,
later.
yeah.
But
We
my
have the
point is,
PDF
you're the
notes
one
from
that brought
Hell
it
in a
up.
Bar.
we do have Helena Bar notes. But the sense
We do.
sense that the motive
And we can send them to you.
that the motive for the preaching of the apostles was to get people out of hell. There's no evidence of that at all. They do talk about judgment, but they talk about judgment to Israel. And
and they
so-
got judged.
Absolutely.
Well, you often say, though, that Jesus is warning them about something.
Yep.
Yes.
What is that something?
So most often when we hear about hell, it's in the context of religious leaders. And hell would have brought to mind a place where Israel committed.
This is why I don't work for a church.
Yeah. Smart.
Why is that?
Because
Because I'm not a
it's
religious
reserved
leader.
for religious.
Oh, yeah. Oh, got it. I'm
But
sorry,
you
I missed
are
that whole-
Tim.
I sidestepped
But
it
you
early.
are
Yeah.
the
Well, yeah,
reluctant
so-
religious
Dang
leader.
it.
So he does and absolutely warn us against something. And as I've talked about before, and loads of people would disagree, I think that the present evil age is fading away. It will pass away, and everything a part of it will pass away.
Right.
And the people who insist on being a part of the present evil age will pass away too. The wages of sin is death. I think that the cosmic verdict over the present evil age is death. And what Jesus will do, of course, is come and remake the world and those found in him. And whether or not people who have died get another chance to accept Jesus, I mean, depending on how you understand what Jesus was doing in hell on that Holy Saturday, I mean, it sounds possible. So I don't believe that the Bible necessarily teaches universalism, which is everyone is fine. I think Jesus comes to save us from something and to something,
Yes.
and he warns us about something.
Yes.
But I think the about something he's warning us against is kind of like the salvation bit. It's both now and not yet, but Gehenna was a picture of the ultimate idolatry and injustice of Israel when they sacrificed their children to the god Molech.
Yep.
And God's judgment over Israel was exile, right? Over that. Like that place was notoriously immoral. And we have records, that are far too late that it was a garbage dump. We have no evidence that it was actually a garbage dump, but it was known as a place of just blatant immorality and fire. But those fires were lit by human hands in the worship of false gods.
Yeah.
That was not that was not God sending people.
That
and
was not the
creating
lake
that.
of fire.
No. And the lake of fire, as we've talked about in Revelation, that's a picture of destruction. So I do think the verdict over this life is death, and the free gift of God is life. And so I think everything that's a part of this present age will come to nothing, in the words of Paul.
It'll get recreated. It'll get repurposed. It'll get he will reform it into what it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
However you want to say that.
So I think what Jesus is warning us against is death. The path that leads to death, the broad gate that leads to destruction, the normal mode of human life that fosters injustice and idolatry. That's what Jesus is warning against, because there's only one place that goes. It's not God up there assigning people. That's the inevitable conclusion of life lived apart from God. Yeah. And I personally think that God will give opportunity. I think that I don't have any biblical basis for that. This is a Mike Erie wish. But I don't
his
believe
grace and his it almost demands it. It almost
If Jesus
I'm
went to
with you on
preach
that.
the gospel to hell, to hell,
to people who had already died.
right?
Yes.
And maybe they died out of ignorance, or maybe they were ancient Israelites. I mean, who knows? I'm just saying God's heart has been always to chase the one. And so I don't think we count on anything other than the grace, mercy, and love of Jesus. We can't count on our own righteousness. We can't count on our own mental furniture in terms of our doctrinal correctness. Like, we're literally counting on the character of God as manifested in Christ.
And then what happens when we model that?
And when we model that, and people say yes, then they're actually saying yes to the real Jesus, as opposed to, well, if you take away the threat of hell, why would I follow him? Like, the fact that people would say no, who've said yes to Jesus but would say no if you took away the threat of hell, means they're not following Jesus at all. Right? That is something, that is your transaction. That is absolutely destructive.
And you come into a relationship with a loving God through an act of fear, rather than a God who says, I'm for you, I'm with you, and I'm toward you. And now I want to invite you into relationship.
Right.
We go into this relationship going, oh, you are the answer to the question that saves me from what I'm most afraid of.
Exactly.
Yeah,
yes.
Totally different.
Totally different. So, and we know this is all, one of the things about being center set means that people are welcome to hold different beliefs and to really struggle and take a lot of time to come to the same conclusion.
It can be very far away from the center.
Yes.
But turn towards the center.
Exactly.
Yes.
So you know, when we get chomping into this stuff, I know it's very easy to say politically correct sort of, well, here are the different views. But when we're advocating for something, we're not advocating it in the sense that, hey, this is what our whole church needs to believe in order to be a part of the church. We're advocating it in the sense of, this is our present conviction on this. And we want to hold it in a way that's gracious and warm and invites curiosity and conversation.
Yep.
So,
and you don't have to agree with us.
Totally.
But it's so human.
Yeah.
To be a part. I always think about, Mike makes fun of me because I like to think about things in tandem with other things.
He loves it.
Yeah.
When I think about evangelism or this kind of ministry work or whatever you want to call it, I think about it and how did the Jews operate in different settings? And I always think of things like sitting shiva with somebody. Like, you're intentionally going to be there in the humanness of what's happening for as long as it takes to be with that person and kind of love them in the way they need to be loved in that moment. How would I translate that posture into any other version of human interaction?
Right.
That's it.
How can I be patient, quiet, listening?
Yeah.
Yada, yada, yada.
That's it. Yada, yada, yada.
Yada, yada, yada.
On that note.
And with that, now you just hang in there, people. You're going to hear an outro that's going to make you laugh.
Yeah.
And it's a universal apology for all of us.
Yes.
And we are thankful for this.
I know,
apology.
seriously. I think we need to up our outro game.
Oh boy.
I know.
Anyway, love you all. Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Journey Now. If for some bizarre reason you liked it, help us spread the word by leaving a review and sharing it on your socials. Journey Now is a production of Journey Church in Brentwood, Tennessee. Edwin Rivera III produces the show and fixes all the guest slurping, gum chewing, coughing, and other annoying sounds. Randy Hansen provides technical assistance even though he denies it. Grant Opperman edits Journey Now and intervenes when necessary to tell the crew that you can't say that. Special shout out to dear listener Brad Erie and dear YouTube watcher Seth Erie. If there's anyone else who makes it through each week, we're so sorry, and thanks to you too.